What if I told you that there's a Stoic teaching that encourages suicide in certain conditions? Or what if I told you that one Stoic principle perceives crimes and war as inherently good for you and good for humanity? In this video, we will discuss 7 dangerous aspects and problematic issues with Stoic philosophy. We will uncover its limits in extreme scenarios, and by the end of this video, we will give you a more balanced understanding so you can avoid the dangers of becoming a blind believer. Welcome to Ancient Wisdom. The dangers from a misunderstanding of Stoicism are real. A recent 2022 scientific study suggests that a naive endorsement of Stoic ideology has negative effects on a person's well-being. The study, to which we posted a link to in the show notes below, further suggests that the most pronounced effects are in increased desires to not express emotions or taciturnity, and the desire to feel less emotions or serenity. These findings align with criticisms against modern promoters of Stoicism who cherry-pick the best teachings from ancient Stoic sages while ignoring the more unpalatable concepts, presumably to make Stoicism more acceptable to a broader market. Whether well-intentioned or not, this approach dilutes Stoicism's more complex and nuanced teachings, which has led to a growing number of naive Stoic practitioners. This is the first problematic issue we will tackle with today's versions of Stoicism. With that, let's kick off our countdown of the 7 lurking dangers you need to recognize and avoid.
Number 7. Modernized Stoicism.
Nassim Taleb, essayist and author of the book Black Swan, once remarked, "Stoicism is about the domestication of emotions, not their elimination." This modern interpretation has become widespread, suggesting how Stoics should manage their emotions. In this modern view, Stoicism emphasizes acknowledging and understanding emotions rather than suppressing them. It teaches emotional resilience and control, not emotional detachment. Arguably, this is misaligned with classic Stoic philosophy. Let's explore what the ancients had to say. Epictetus said, "If you kiss your child or your wife, say that you only kiss things which are human, and thus you will not be disturbed if either of them dies." In a similar vein, Seneca wrote in his moral letters to Lucilius, letter 63, "I am grieved to hear that your friend Flaccus is dead, but I would not have you sorrow more than is fitting. That you should not mourn at all, I shall hardly dare to insist. And yet I know that it is the better way." Both Epictetus and Seneca encourage the elimination of emotions as the better way. Yet modern thought leaders suggest we should merely domesticate them, in other words, control them. So should the goal be to eliminate emotions or merely to tame them? Another problematic modernization of Stoicism is its departure from key concepts around Stoic cosmology, which served as the underpinnings of Stoic ethics. As explained by Stephen Gambardella in one of his essays in The Sophist, ancient Stoic ethics are built on a pedestal of Stoicism's cosmology, a set of axioms about the world and our place in it. Modern Stoicism is lacking the continuity of such a relationship. It's built on modern beliefs and values that have no relation to Stoicism's core ethical priorities. Gambardella's description of this shift in the Stoic belief structure has, in his words, divested Stoicism of its spiritual power. These are just a few of many examples of how modern Stoicism is inconsistent with classic teachings, stemming from the tendency of modern authors to update or modernize Stoicism to fit modern standards or tastes.
Number 6. War and crime is good.
Marcus Aurelius famously said, "All things that happen, happen aright," implying that everything occurs for a purpose, and one must come to terms with this reality. This sentiment lies at the heart of amor fati, a Latin phrase translating to love of fate, which serves as a cornerstone in Stoic philosophy. Amor fati urges individuals to wholeheartedly embrace and welcome whatever unfolds in their lives as an intrinsic component of the universal order. However, this framework seemingly struggles to rationalize extreme events, such as war, genocide, or heinous crimes, which then poses significant ethical dilemmas. If God or the divine logos, the eons realissimum, decrees it, then should we blindly accept it all as good? Doesn't this go against fundamental notions of morality and human decency? These contentious points continue to be debated, and Stoicism's rationality in such scenarios is challenged in many different ways. But for the moment, let us, for the sake of discussion, accept that amor fati is the end-all and be-all in Stoicism, to accept all that happens as good. How then does this reconcile with danger number 5, the next problematic issue?
Number 5. Suicide is acceptable.
In antiquity, Stoicism gained renown for its acceptance of suicide. Not only did it defend the right of the wise individual to seek a reasonable departure, eulogos exagogia, from life, but its founder Zeno and his successor Cleanthes both died by suicide. The most eminent Stoics, Seneca the Younger, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, each espoused the belief that death by one's own hand is always an option and often more honorable than enduring a life of prolonged misery. They accepted that suicide was permissible for the wise person in circumstances that might prevent them from living a virtuous life. Viewed in isolation from other Stoic teachings, the endorsement of suicide in certain conditions might seem acceptable, even sensible, to non-Stoics. However, ending one's life to escape fate, whether it be pain and suffering from disease or lack of freedom due to captivity or slavery, seemingly contradicts amor fati, which dictates that everything happens for a purpose. As such, no matter how dire or evil the condition, one should accept it blindly, even see it as good. In this sense, isn't suicide then a rejection of the events ordained by God or the divine logos? How then does one reconcile this apparent contradiction within Stoic teachings? Clearly, amor fati and the acceptability of suicide, even for the wise, are incompatible when viewed in this light. How can this be resolved then?
Number 4. Stoic passivity.
Epictetus famously said, "It is not in our control to have everything turn out exactly as we want, but it is in our control to control how we respond to what happens." This, in essence, the dichotomy of control, is a central tenet of Stoic philosophy. This concept encourages individuals to focus their efforts and energy on what they can control, such as their thoughts or actions, and accept with equanimity all other aspects of life, even the results of our actions, which aren't always guaranteed. Critics argue, however, that this leads to the passivity problem. If we focus only on our character, reactions, and actions, and put no effort into things that lie outside our direct control, then it can be interpreted as an encouragement of passivity even in the face of major problems. Social inequality, injustice, even climate change. Moreover, the binary framing of everything as controllable or uncontrollable is also criticized as overly simplistic. Critics ask, why can we not accommodate a more nuanced framing to include a third category, things that we can partially control or influence? An example of such would be winning an athletic contest, where one can certainly train hard to improve one's chances of success, even though it is never guaranteed. This proposition seems too obvious. We can't help but wonder why it was never incorporated into Stoic teachings. Without delving into the rabbit hole of this interesting debate on an alternative trichotomy of control, the criticism surrounding Stoicism's seeming crudeness underscores the limitations inherent in its classic teaching. At the minimum, these criticisms point to how Stoicism falls out of favor with modern sensibilities and tastes.
Number 3. Detachment from everything.
Memento mori is a Latin phrase that translates to remember that you will die. It reminds us that death is inevitable. Life and everything is transient and impermanent. This concept is central to Stoic philosophy and helps individuals live more purposefully, appreciate the present moment, and cultivate inner resilience in the face of adversity. This emphasis on impermanence encourages detachment from various aspects of life, such as material possessions, wealth, and even personal relationships. However, critics argue that this contradicts modern cultural values that emphasize the importance of emotional connection. Moreover, when extended to broader aspects of life, Stoicism raises challenging questions. Does Stoicism discourage nationalism, given the impermanence of one's country? What implications does Stoicism have for one's commitment to higher causes, such as religious beliefs or personal missions? And what about attachment to Stoicism itself? In the same vein, and returning to one's personal experience, such as that of friends who might abandon you, children who could be struck by some terrible disease, or a spouse who might die tomorrow, should one actively suppress attachment, even love, for the sake of blunting or preventing the psychological blow of a potential future loss? Critics argue that this detachment is extreme and devalues relationships. Worse, it reduces our humanity. If Stoicism teaches us that attachment leads to suffering and commitment leads to pain, by following a Stoic approach then, are we then rejecting the beauty of a life filled with love and relationships?
Number 2. Stoicism versus human nature.
Epictetus wrote, "You hand over your mind to anyone who comes along, so they may abuse you, leaving it disturbed and troubled. Have you no shame in that?" In this quote, Epictetus emphasizes the importance of safeguarding one's mind and preventing others from exerting power over it. By metaphorically handing it over, individuals open themselves to potential harm and manipulation. Self-sufficiency, a key concept in Stoicism, makes perfect sense even to non-Stoics. However, critics raise concerns about Stoicism, seemingly suggesting that you become a lesser person if you depend on others. If you let someone have control over your life and your mind, then you are weak. However, navigating the complexities of human relationships often requires diplomacy and compromise as part of normal human dynamics. Does participation in this then diminish you? Critics argue that there should be no shame in that at all. Johnny Thompson expressed the argument best in a published article, where he explains that it's inherently human, it's a badge of pride. As Aristotle, definitely not a Stoic, argued, we are all socio-political animals. We can only flourish when we work together and in a society. In modern times, there are some who argue that we are evolutionarily wired to be social, cooperative, and mutually dependent. Yes, natural does not mean right, but sometimes unnatural does at least feel wrong.
Number 1. No answer for depression.
Seneca the Younger, in his work on the happy life, De Vita Beata, famously teaches that virtue is the only good. It alone is sufficient for happiness. Stoicism espouses moral virtue as the singular essential for attaining happiness, asserting that living in accordance with virtue is both necessary and sufficient for a fulfilling life. However, critics argue that while moral virtue may contribute to overall well-being, it does not necessarily help with conditions like depression. As a complex mental health issue often involving biological, psychological, and environmental factors, depression is simply beyond the scope of Stoic principles. Put simply, moral virtue cannot cure depression.
Conclusion.
Stoicism, as a conglomerate of writings and teachings from various philosophers, is far from flawless or completely coherent. Not all of its sages always agree, reflecting the diversity and complexity inherent in its principles. Blindly accepting all of its teachings uncritically clearly runs counter to the practice of wisdom, which itself is a central tenet of Stoic philosophy. Despite Stoicism's flaws, however, it does not invalidate its significance as a whole. Its enduring value lies in its ability to assist millions of individuals in their journey of self-discovery and personal growth, aiding them in confronting life's challenges and enriching their experiences. Therefore, one should open one's eyes to its inherent limitations and contradictions to foster a sober and candid appreciation. What we need then is a more nuanced understanding, a more nuanced approach. As imperfect individuals, we continually strive for progress. Perhaps that too is how we should see Stoicism, flawed yet continually evolving alongside us.